Today's video we're doing a 2014 Ford Fusion transmission removal. I'm using a auto salvage transmission, so the transmission currently slips. We're putting in a transmission from a auto recycler. So along the video you're going to see and make some pretty profound statements when it comes to removing the transmission. Specifically the torque converter from the flex plate. Unless you know, it's very difficult. Typically you take the starter out and then you remove the flex plate torque converter bolts. However, this time I came up with a different idea, and I make some statements as to how the heck would Ford build a vehicle engine that you have to remove the oil pan to get the torque converter flex plate bolts loose. But you'll see throughout the video, the first half, some of you will probably be screaming and saying, "Hey dummy, there's another component you're missing." But end of the day, the job got done. The video ends rather abruptly, but the vehicle is running. Air conditioning is back working. And I think they've got, I don't know, 5,000-6,000 miles on a vehicle now. It's a neighbor across the street from my house was putting it in for him. So I do know it's running well. But again, there's a lot of things with this vehicle that I didn't really count on. So enjoy the video. I hope it helps some of you. People that work at Ford dealerships, they know these couple of things that I missed along the way. So hope it helps. I'm swapping out the transmission on a 2014 Ford Fusion. This is a 1.5 liter turbocharge. So on the upper side, there really isn't much other than disconnecting wires, pulling off clips, and the transmission mount that goes right in there. It's all pretty straightforward. The kicker with this job is I struggled trying to figure out how to take the flex plate and the torque converter apart. Up here is where the starter is, and it is pretty much impossible to get in there. The bolts are behind here, and it doesn't line up. You can't get a wrench in there to save your life. So looking at it more and more, I found that the whole oil pan, the line is here. Here's a, right in here is a bolt for the flex plate. So it appears that you have to take off the oil pan to get the flex plate and torque converter separated. I believe if I would have done that first, I may not have had to take off the H-frame, but it comes off very easy. So I took it off anyway. I'm not in a hurry, it's not a rush. So if it makes it a little bit easier for me to get at things, so be it. I have the rack and the sway bar up with bungee cords so that nothing comes apart inside where the steering shaft connects to the rack. There's a couple bolts that become very challenging to get to when you're taking it off. So these are kind of tough. You just have to know they're there. And then these are on the starter. I feel sorry for anybody that has to change a starter on this Fusion, on this motor. You can get it, you can weasel it out of there, but there is nothing easy about it. So there's 12 bolts that go around the bell housing to engine connection. So my next step is I'm draining the oil out now, and I will drop that oil pan, and then I'll bring everybody back up to speed at that point. The job is not hard. It's just nuts and bolts. The problem is that you take so much time trying to figure out, okay, what do I have to remove to get everything out? And I may have gone overboard, and again, like I said, I'm okay with it because if it makes it easier for me, that's fine. I also have to do the air conditioning compressor on this car. He's buried up in there. And with that frame off of there, it should be pretty easy to get at. And I have the new one, well, the rebuild or the replacement transmission there, and then the transmission that was slipping. So that is the oil pan. We look upside, and bam, there they are right there. So now I would definitely say, again, I'm not going to say that the H-frame in or out is going to be a good thing. However, here's the air conditioner, and that frame came right, there was a mount right here. So it would have been challenging to get this air conditioner out. So regardless if it needed to stay in or out, you need to take the freaking oil pan off to get at the torque converter flex plate connection. Crazy. I would have never guessed that. So we'll keep moving from there. We'll get that separated. We've got a new torque converter. We'll get all that stuff lined up and we'll get it thrown up into the car. The one nice thing is everything, engine and transmission, their mounts are up, the main mounts are up top. There's one small motor or one small mount that goes, I'll pull you down here. It connects right here. So there's a mount that goes here and stabilizes the lower part of the transmission bell or the bell housing engine interface. And that's all that's on the bottom to hold the engine and transmission. So everything is upstairs as far as motor mounts go. Motor mount and transmission mount. And then just that one little stabilizer that's probably in here. I had a little bit of insight now, and the starter, if you try hard enough, you could get it to come out, which apparently I didn't try hard enough. And there is this rubber boot. That rubber boot lays right in there. And you can see, and that cutout works perfectly to get at the bolts. Seeing as I have already taken the oil pan off, which, let's see, yeah, I can stick my finger through there. So it's right there. That's the way you do it. But because I already went ahead and did this, I'm going to leave this all intact. I'm going to leave this way, and then I can put them in there. This is just RTV or it's silicone seal, so there's no gasket. These are machine surfaces. We'll scrape them clean. But I was wrong. Maybe I should have done more research, but I'll be more comfortable putting the transmission back in with the torque converter bolts sticking through. But you don't need to do all that, which it's only, I don't know, a handful, 10, 12 bolts when you have that rubber boot removed from up there. But you're never going to believe what Ford has done with this transmission. You have to take the cover, the half of the transmission apart to get at the filter. It is just unbelievably not serviceable for an average person to change the filter. So I'm changing the filter. I pulled the cover off. You can see the planetary gear. You can see the differential. You can see the clutch and the chain. All the guides, I guess a guy can look in there, but this is really over the top if you want to simply service this transmission. I just can't quite believe that this transmission would last long enough to not service the filter. So, no gasket, all RTV. Well, we'll change the filter, put her back together, clean out all the old fluid, inspect all of the gearing, and get it back together and get the thing assembled. I didn't think I would have to disassemble the transmission to assemble it. So, just so you know, if you're ever looking to service the filter, you have to take your transmission apart, because there it is. So today I picked up the new transmission filter for this 2014 Ford Fusion SE 6-speed automatic. And I installed it, and it took me a while to find one because the Ford dealers don't change these. They're a lifetime filter, lifetime of the transmission. In fact, one Ford dealer told me that to rebuild one of these transmissions isn't worth it. They're actually a disposable unit. So, hard to say. I never been into one like this, but if you're ever gonna change the filter, you take these 10mm bolts out. They're all hex head, and that one right there. And then you pull this out, and then this filter is slotted like so. See down there, is it slotted? Or I guess keyed. You put it in and you rotate it. So I'm gonna clean up the surface, get the surfaces clean and oil free, put the halves together, and prepare the transmission for install. Now this is a transmission from an auto recycler, so I felt, seeing as the unit was out, I would change the filter. Seemed like a good time, and it's actually not that bad, but you do have to pull the transmission in half, which is crazy. But once I get it all back together and sealed up, I'll take a video of putting everything back in, and maybe some of the, not complicated, but more of the tighter spots. I've already made the one mistake, not really a mistake, but removing the bolts for the torque converter flex plate connection. But I'll show you what I got when I go to put it up. So we're putting her back up there. A couple things. One, the rack, and two, the exhaust mount will interfere when you try to push it over this far. Right now I've got it laid back a little bit until I get myself lined up. So I added a ratchet strap to the back on both, and that'll pull these back to give me a little bit easier clearance. This is one part where you really can't force it or horse it. And I pulled the starter out, and right now, it's hard to see, right up in here, again, tough to see, but that's where the starter goes in, and I pulled the rubber boot out so I could get my fingers in there and feel when the torque converter flex plate are lined up. So again, the mount for the transmission, to the exhaust, and the rack, this interference here, these hits. So I pulled them back so I can get that up. And then once I get them in, then I'll raise everything back up where it belongs. That one stayed in the whole time. And I actually did use it when it was time to kind of pull it in. But I was able to put a long bolt here and then one along this other side and pull it in. So that's it. Wasn't bad. I have to go after the air conditioning compressor after I button up the transmission up on top. Then we'll replace that and we'll be good to go. Transmission is in and we're lined up good. It actually was easier than trying to work my hand up in by the starter hole. Maybe people with more practice would be, easier for them to do that. But up on the transmission jack, being able to see the flex plate and the torque converter really worked out nice. Everything went up. Again, the rack and the exhaust were in the way a bit. Then up top, we got the tranny mount hanging. Everything is all solid. So that's probably where I'm going to stop for the night. I work during the day and then I just kind of putz around with cars at night. So everything's looking good. Usually though, when things go too easy, usually something wrong. So should take a couple more days to get the rest of it put together. And then it will be all done. No tricky spots. This bolt right here, this is the one it's up here behind the exhaust that goes to the turbo.